time for Northwestern Outdoors Radio, brought to you by Loophole, America's optical authority. Check out their scopes, binoculars, and more at loophole.com. By Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors. See what's cooking for you at campchef.com. By Wallowa County, nature never looks so good as it does in Northeast Oregon. Plan your trip today at WallawaCountyChamber.com. By Max Lure Company, makers of the Smile Blade and Wedding Ring Spinner. Find out more at maxlure.com. And by Mardon Resort, where the fish bite, but we don't. Book your next hunting, fishing, or camping getaway at mardonresort.com. Now, let's head to the field and find out what's going on this week with your host, Sean Cruz.
Did you get outside Memorial Day weekend? I usually stay away from the crowds, but I have to admit, I couldn't stay completely away from the outdoors. My son and I hiked up to 8 Mile Lake in Washington's Alpine Lakes Wilderness for a bit of fishing, and our family camped out in the backyard to try to catch that meteor shower last week, too. All in all, I can't complain. Our show this week is kind of a whatchamacallit stew because we're going to be covering all sorts of different topics. One of them will be outdoors cooking, though, and Tim Murphy, author of the Flannel John's cookbook series for guys, is coming on board to tell us about some great fish and game meals you can prepare, and better still, when you buy his books, 25% of the proceeds goes to the Wounded Warrior Project, and I'm all over that. We'll also be talking with Todd Vandevert about his new book, Operation Cody. I'll be honest, I almost didn't air the interview I did with this retired Washington Fish and Wildlife detective because he comes across as extremely bitter towards the leaders of the organization he worked for, and I personally have a high degree of respect for the men and women who choose to be fish and game wardens and for those who lead the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. However, the reason I did go forward with this is because Todd does a great job of bringing the issue of wildlife trafficking to light, the illegal sales of fish and wildlife by poachers to individuals and in some cases businesses like restaurants. It's a problem not limited to Washington State either. Speaking of fish, Lance Mers joins us to talk about Oregon kokanee fishing and has a suggestion on a lightweight gang troll you'll want to use to catch some of these tasty fish during an extended Max Minute. We'll also be talking to Del Stevens about the Oregon Tuna Classic Tournament Series coming up this summer, a competition that does great work by donating hundreds of pounds of freshly caught tuna to food banks in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Throw in some outdoor news segments and fishing reports from around the Northwest, and we've got a lot coming your way this week. But before we get into all of that, we've got another edition of Sportsman Spotlight on tap for you. This week, David Sparks has got some tips on a bow you might want to try out as an archery hunter from a man who knows quite a bit about the subject.
Every once in a while, we love to give you some information on hunting and fishing gear. Got some from a real expert, somebody in the field, not a salesman. I'm David Sparks, Sportsman Spotlight. Edwin Harpole from Extreme Hunts, an outfitting service in Pike County, Illinois, is a lifetime bow hunter and talks about his preferences when it comes to archery hunting for whitetail.
I've always shot Hoyt bows. I just think they're the most consistent. I love a solid lock-in point when you draw the bow. Most others all rock a little bit when you pull it full draw. Always enjoyed them. A lot of guys around here shooting Matthews, and I love to be a little bit different. That's probably one of the major reasons. All the manufacturers make good bows now, but I'll always continue to shoot a Hoyt as long as I'm shooting archery. Most of the arrows now are all Carbon Express arrows and no special reason for it. They're just a good quality arrow and relatively inexpensive for the carbon arrows.
As a deer hunter, you choose to shoot a bow. Why did you make that decision as opposed to shotgun, muzzleloader, rifle?
The challenge and the experience you have hunting with bow and arrow, the amount of deer you see is phenomenal compared to with a firearm. You have a lot less pressure in the woods. You see a lot more activity with the deer and other animals in the woods. The interaction with wildlife is unbelievable and enjoyable.
Do you think it's fairer to go after a deer with a bow and arrow as opposed to a 270 or a 300?
They're all fair. It's definitely more challenging with archery equipment. You've got to have a deer basically within 40 yards, or you're looking to do something in 20 to 40 yards.
This is David Sparks for Sportsman Spotlight.
I've enjoyed every person I've ever worked with at Farm Credit.
Oregon farmer Skip Gray talks about Northwest Farm Credit Services.
You want to surround yourself with top drawer people, and Farm Credit provides top drawer people. So it's been my privilege to be a local advisor with Farm Credit.
Northwest Farm Credit Services is a cooperative guided by customer advisors. Farmer Chad Neely explains the advantages of such a system.
The board of directors are all agriculture people, whether they're dairymen, cow guys, cow-calf guys, or row crop or dryland farmers. They've all been out there on the front lines, and I have access to those people.
This kind of access is an advantage for producers.
That's a big thing. I mean, there's one of the guys that farms real close to right here, and I can call and talk to him and say, hey, what do you think? Or here's my opinion. So many banks, they don't even let you get close to the people that make the decisions. You don't even know who they are.
Northwest Farm Credit Services. Customer owned, customer driven.
Tall Timber Ranch is about
spending time outdoors
and having fun
and getting closer to God.
Find out more at talltimber.org.
You demand quality performance from your binoculars, whether you use them in the field, on the water, or at a stadium. But you don't want to spend a fortune. That's where the BX McKenzie binoculars from Leupold come in. These armored, waterproof binoculars are both comfortable and dependable. Look for your McKenzie binoculars at quality sporting goods retailers near you, to include your Cabela's, Sportsman's Warehouse, or Northwest Weimar stores. BX McKenzie, bringing your world into sharper focus, only from Leupold.
Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. Next up, we've got an interview for you, and I'll tell you what, I was really wrestling whether to air this or not. We're talking to Todd Vandervert. He's the author of a book called Operation Cody, and there's two things that occur in this book. Number one, he slams his former employer, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, especially the law enforcement division he worked for. And I've got to tell you, I flat don't agree with that, because I know a lot of the men and women who work in that organization, they're quality people. They're doing good work, especially considering the fact they're very understaffed. And I don't appreciate that. But the book uncovers the problem of wildlife trafficking, the selling of wildlife for profit. It turns out it's a huge problem, not just here in Washington State, but likely throughout the Northwest. And for that reason, we're going to air this interview and tell you more about this book, Operation Cody, from audio we recorded at the Bighorn Show earlier this spring in Spokane. Todd, this is a fascinating read.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed working the case, and I enjoyed writing the book, and I hope everybody enjoys reading it.
Why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background that led you to writing this book?
I'm originally from the East Coast. I moved out to go to Washington State University. I got a job with what was then the game department in early '79. Started in wildlife management, and then I switched to enforcement, and I was a uniform officer for the majority of my career, worked 34 years. The last 8 years, I was a detective with a unit called the Statewide Investigative Unit, which is a part of Fish and Wildlife that investigates major crimes, mostly commercial crimes against fish and wildlife.
I'm very well aware that in Washington State there's been a lot of stings when it comes to shellfish, but this is the first operation I'm aware of that has really gone into the world of illegal wildlife trafficking in terms of big game animals. But this turned into a whole lot more than that, didn't it?
It did. And you hit it on the head. There have been a lot of long-term, in-depth investigations in shellfish. We have done quite a few short-term wildlife trafficking cases in the past, but they were short-term and single-person cases, one targeted person. This case, I just came up with the idea from talking to an investigator from another state, and he had run what's called a storefront operation, where you start a business and hope the bad guys come to you.
I'm going to interrupt here because this was fascinating. You basically started this business on the internet, and you got some business cards, and you got permission to have another officer assist you, a female Fish and Wildlife officer that has now been promoted to sergeant in the agency. And so the two of you basically posed as husband and wife, and on the surface, it didn't seem like what you were doing was illegal. I mean, why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners what the stated purpose of your business was and how it quickly devolved into something else among the criminal element?
Okay. Yeah, our business was named Best of the Wild. And we created a website that was an enticing website. I built it. And it was advertised all legal wildlife items, antlers, legal furs. You can sell in Washington, you can sell game-farmed elk and deer meat as long as it's individually packaged and receipted and it comes from an out-of-state game farm. So we sold that. all the while knowing that it would be attractive to poachers. The poachers would approach us both to buy and sell illegal wildlife, but everything on our website was legal to buy and sell. We had a lot of antlers and furs and things like that.
Again, this was just, to me, an absolutely fascinating read because, you basically start off with, well, for lack of a better word, a couple of meth heads that are poaching deer and trying to sell deer to you and eagle feathers and hawk feathers. And very soon, you started getting more business than you could deal with in terms of people selling you elk meat, people selling you deer, people selling you sturgeon, people selling you up to 100 steelhead at a time, people asking for gallbladders, and then we get into international intrigue because they're trying to ship it to China. You ended up getting business in terms of, people wanted to deal with you from Idaho, from Oregon. Within a year, this thing snowballed into what had to be clear to, anybody looking at this as a huge, huge problem.
Yeah, it surprised us a lot. The one thing that surprised us the most was the trafficking in deer and elk meat. Up until we had done this case, I was only aware of one case in Washington for trafficking in deer and elk meat. We didn't expect a lot of it, and we got a lot of it. We had one individual that was moving about 16 elk a month, and he was doing that he would go from September 1st to the end of March, early April, and that's significant. And he'd been in business 7 years before we caught him. So, yeah, we had a tremendous volume in meats, and we didn't expect that.
And you were just getting calls out of the blue. Hey, I've got a bighorn sheep to give you. I've got a mountain goat that I want to sell you. I've got, again, steelhead. I've got sturgeon. Just all this stuff. You're not out there asking these people for it necessarily. They're coming to you. And I guess we also ought to acknowledge the fact that, restaurants were doing business too. You had a lot of restaurants, not a lot, but several restaurants that were basically saying, bring us pheasant, bring us deer meat, bring us elk meat. And, we're basically making deals out the back door, weren't you?
We were. We sold mountain lion, bear to restaurants, and we were shocked. That's the best way to put it. We were absolutely shocked by the volume and the species that we were dealing in.
We need to touch on something else here, and that's the fact that this was supposed to be a 2-year operation. They basically pulled the rug out from under you, for lack of a better word, about 14 months into it, is that correct?
Yes. We were restricted to only dealing with our, quote, top 8 suspects at about the 14-month mark. We had been promised 24 months, which would have given us 2 hunting seasons. It didn't go that long.
And folks, I got to tell you, Todd here, it's a fascinating and compelling read. You're just going to be amazed at what he went through here on this investigation. But I'm going to be honest here, the reader's going to have to decide, because you poured a lot of emotion into this. You poured your heart into this book. It's very clear. And you have a lot of anger towards your administration at the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And whether or not you're a disgruntled employee or whether or not you had a legitimate beef, I guess we're going to let the readers decide on that. But I want to go ahead and talk more about this absolutely fascinating book. Again, it's called Best of the Wild, Operation Cody, an undercover investigation of illegal wildlife trafficking in Washington State and actually throughout the Northwest, quite frankly, written by retired Fish and Wildlife Detective Todd A. Vandevert. And again, we've got him here on Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Let's talk about something else that I thought was really interesting. Time and time again, people had the ability to see some of this illegal activity going on and make a call to Fish and Wildlife, and it just never seemed to happen in terms of citizens picking up the phone.
That's true. We had some of these cases came about as a result of citizens giving us information. The other thing I wanted to explain to you is we ended up with about 103 suspects that we charged in this case. We made personal contacts with over 600. The difference between the 103 that we arrested and the 600 that we made contacts with, we just didn't have the manpower to follow through with a lot of them. We also tried our very best to sort out the dummies from the hardcore criminals. So people that we were contacted by that wanted to sell us something, and then we found out through communication with them that they didn't even know it was illegal, we blew them off. We wouldn't do business with them.
At the end of the day, when this investigation was over, warrants were served, arrests were made. Was justice done to some of these people or not?
Not in my opinion. The courts, not just in Washington, across the United States, do not take wildlife crime seriously. There's a pervasive attitude that there's no victim. It's a victimless crime. And you have to also understand when courts deal with murder, rape, robbery, burglaries all the time, drug dealers, a lot of judges, unless they have a hunting and fishing background, find it difficult to take it real seriously when a guy comes in because he's poached 3 deer. All of our crimes that we dealt with are felony level crimes. But It's entirely up to the judge and the prosecutor on how seriously they'll take them, and unfortunately, a lot of times they don't.
I'll tell you what, having read this, get a hold of this book. It's a huge problem, and it's affecting the resource that all of us as outdoorsmen and outdoors women love. Our resources here in the Northwest in terms of big game animals and so much more. Todd, I got to thank you for writing this book. Where can people get a hold of Operation Cody?
I have a website, operationcody.com, or it's available on Amazon.
So go to amazon.com. Operation Cody, C-O-D-Y. Operation Cody, C-O-D-Y. Look for it on Amazon or on your website. One more time with that.
OperationCody.com.
OperationCody.com. Go ahead and read this book. You're going to really get your eyes open, and I think you're going to be as unsettled as I am. Todd, thanks for writing it. Thanks for sharing it with us on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks for the time. Thank you.
I'd like to tell you I just brought down that buck, but I didn't. I missed. And you know why I missed? Because of the scope I've got on my rifle. You see, my friends told me to get a Leupold rifle scope. Why? Well, because Leupold is America's optical authority. They make a huge variety of quality scopes for every need, and they make them right here in the Northwest. Unfortunately, I didn't listen. I used the cheap scope that came with this rifle when I bought it. And when it came time to pull the trigger, well, let's just say things were a little blurry. Now, I've got nothing to look forward to except a long, empty-handed walk back home. Next time I come out into the field, there's going to be a Leupold scope on my rifle. And next time, I'm not going to miss.
Leupold rifle scopes. Check out the whole line at leupold.com and look for them at a sporting goods store near you.
We're back with John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
It's time for another Max Minute.
Fish on!
Brought to you every week by Max Lure Company, makers of the wedding ring spinner and patented smile blade. With us here again is Lance Mers. Lance, Kokanee Power of Oregon has announced their Derby schedule. June 14th, Wickiup Reservoir. July 12th, Green Peter Reservoir. August 6th, Odell Lake. They're all going to attract a whole bunch of anglers trying to catch kokanee and getting the money. And on top of that, anybody at any time can always fish Wallowa Lake, which gave up that world record kokanee a few years ago in Northeast Oregon and is just stock full of these fish. If you were going to talk to one of these tournament anglers or somebody heading out to Wallowa Lake, what would you suggest they use to have a shot at the money or a shot at a big fish?
John, whenever you go kokanee fishing on any lake, it's going to change from lake to lake. So changing your presentation is the key and essential to getting more fish in your boat. One of the things that I like to use is the Max Lure flashlight troll. It's the world's lightest gang troll. It's basically taking the place of the old cowbells, the old Ford fenders. The great thing about it is real light, so it's got those mylar blades, kind of like the smile blades. And the good thing about them is that they counter-rotate in the water, giving you that extra attraction.
So you don't have the weight of the cowbells, you don't have the vibration, but you still have the flash. And I guess that means you're feeling those light bites that kokanee are known for.
Absolutely. It takes away from those big weighted down gang trolls, and that presentation allows that better bite that you can see and feel a lot better.
So there you go, folks. Get rid of those old cowbells and go ahead and check out the flashlight troll from Max Lure Company. That wraps up another Max Minute for Max Lure Company, makers of the patented smile blade and wedding ring spinner.
Breathe the fresh mountain air and feel the tranquility in Northeast Oregon's Wallowa County. Cast your line into the clear waters of our mountain-fed streams and rivers. Find solitude and surround yourself with nature as you fish for rainbow, brook, and bull trout. Or challenge yourself and fish for world-class steelhead in the wild and scenic Wallowa River or kokanee in the deep waters of Wallowa Lake. And when evening comes, spend some time hoisting a local brew and telling the tales of the one that got away. Watch the world wake up in Wallowa County. Your morning begins at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
Looking for the ultimate salmon and halibut fishing experience at a great price? Then make plans to enjoy the real news for the Wild Northern Fish-In. Taking place August 23rd through the 26th. You'll be fishing the protected waters around British Columbia's Queen Charlotte Islands during the day and enjoying first-class food and accommodations at night. If you want an incredible saltwater fishing experience you'll never forget, the Wild Northern Fish-In is for you. Find out more at therealnews.com. That's the real, REEL news.com for the Wild Northern Fish-In.
Looking for that extra something that will get more salmon or trout into your boat? Then check out the Double D Dodger from Max Lure. The Double D does double duty and helps you catch more fish. The Double D's flash attracts lunkers, and the Dodger's patented stop-start action works wonders to get those fish biting. The Double D does even more by acting as a side planer to get your bait away from the boat where the fish are more likely to be and more apt to strike. The Double D Dodger. It's the Dodger you've got to have from Max Lure.
You're back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio, and God knows we love to eat here at this show, especially when it comes to outdoor cooking. With that in mind, we've got Tim Murphy on board. He is the author of the Flannel John's cookbook series, Just for Guys. He's also the operations manager for our affiliate, KVAS 1230 in Astoria, which airs our show every week. And we got a couple of his books, and we read them, and we've got to share them with you. Tim, welcome aboard, and this looks like some good food you've got to share with us.
Well, thank you, John. Yeah, and I wrote them because I always say that, men, we're always looking for good, tasty meals that we can prepare quickly because we're lazy and we're hungry, and that's what this kind of started with.
Well, you're right, and there's, 14 books in this series?
Yep, everything for guys. We got, outdoors, we've got hunters, fishers, campers, car guys, we've got them for rock and rollers, we've got them for tailgaters. Any theme a guy would like, we've got one for him right now.
Well, you know what I love about these books is no nonsense. You don't have anything in here about an intro about my trip to Tuscany or anything like that. I mean, it's just, here's the book, here's the recipes, guys, go to it. And like you said, they're simple and they're quick, and that appeals to me quite a bit. The price point's pretty good too, isn't it?
Yeah, we most of them are $7.95, and the big double anthology goes to $12.95. But yeah, I try to keep them inexpensive because you guys just want something. How do I do this? And they can look it up and go, oh, okay, I got these 6 ingredients. I can make this happen. And when you're out at the camp, you're not going to get real sophisticated. You just want something tasty and warm and get you through the night, and that's what these books do.
Reading through these, it looks like that's exactly what they do, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. I think a lot of people are going to feel the same way. Now, these are inexpensive books, but another thing I should say that really appeals to me is the fact that not only are they inexpensive, but you're donating 25% of the proceeds to a project that I think is fantastic, the Wounded Warrior Project. Tell me more about that.
Well, I was working on one last November. I was working on the Rock and Roll Cookbook, and I'm sitting there Sunday morning eating my bagel, typing away, and CBS Sunday Morning came on, and they were featuring a story of Roger Waters, the bass player from Pink Floyd, and how he was working with wounded vets to put these bands together like music therapy. But they were putting together incredible rock and roll bands. And I'm like, that's it. I'm working on a rock and roll cookbook. I want to do something good. I had a nephew who spent 20 years in the Marines. He came back physically intact. My father was in World War II. My grandfather, World War I. I'm like, you know what? I'm having success with these. I want to pay some of this forward. So in December, I put it out on Facebook and also on the website that 25% of all the sales, that move, we're going to give to the Wounded Warrior Project. And it was the most books I ever sold in 1 month. And I'm like, well, if that's the kind of response I'm getting, I want to do some more good. I want to make this ongoing. So I contacted the Wounded Warrior Foundation, sent them that first check, and said, you know what, from now on, for as long as I'm on the planet, 25% of all the royalties I get from these books, we're sending to you guys to help these men and women that need the help.
Well, Tim, as a veteran myself, God bless you. I think it's fantastic what you're doing. Again, folks, we're talking to Tim Murphy. He is the author of a whole bunch of cookbooks, basically the Flannel John's series of cookbooks for guys. And I've got 2 of them in my hand. One of them is the Flannel John's Hunting Cabin Cookbook that covers venison, fowl, and wild game. And the other one is your Fishing Shack Cookbook. Let's go ahead and start off with the Hunting Cookbook and tell me what people are going to find inside of here.
Well, I grew up in Chicago, but like I said, I spent time in Michigan, so a lot of my friends were hunters, and they kind of exposed me to deer hunting and deer sausage and backstraps and all that stuff. But as I've gotten older and gotten more and more into the woods, it's not just deer. I've got a couple of friends that swear by squirrel. They love...
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to swear at them, but hey, whatever you're into. I've had some friends that love rattlesnake. They said, oh, it tastes just like chicken. Well, then eat chicken. But...
Right.
When you try it, it's like, if it's seasoned right and made correctly, it's like, okay, it's a different taste, but I like this kind of stuff. So, yeah, as far as the Hunting Cabin Cookbook, we do have venison in there, but we've got moose, we've got elk, we have fowl. I spent a lot of time in North Dakota working radio there, so I got much more turned on to bird cooking, grouse and dove and that kind of stuff, wild turkey. So yeah, we got a little something for everybody, and some have as little as 5 ingredients, and some get kind of extensive, may go to 15 ingredients, but there's a little something for everybody. So if you're not just a deer hunter, if you do want to go out and try beaver tail, if you want to try raccoon, if you want to try a roadkill stew, which I have friends that do that, it's like, okay, here's a way to make it safe and good, and we're going to get maximum flavor, and it might turn you on to something you never thought of eating before.
Well, I love it. And I'm leaping through this again. I love the fact you got dove recipes, duck recipes, pheasant recipes. But yeah, fricasseed raccoon. This is the only cookbook I've ever seen that has a recipe for fricasseed raccoon followed by gator country stew. So this is good stuff. Let's talk about something else, though. That's your Fishing Shack cookbook. Now, you live in Astoria, and
I do.
There's a lot of people out there that know a lot about cooking shellfish and about cooking salmon and about cooking crabs and oysters and everything else. How does your book measure up in a place like this?
Well, hopefully very well. I mean, this was kind of new to me. I've only been in Oregon about 5 years, and I've only been in the Astoria area for about a year. But you quickly learn when you come to Oregon and you're on the coast that, yeah, clams and crabs, they're king around here. In fact, in one of my earlier books, I had actually named a sandwich after Newport, the Newport crab sandwich. So this one takes it up to the next notch. There's no filler here. There's no side dishes. It's strictly fish, shrimp, clams, crabs, and oysters. And I've had people look it over, and it's like, wow, these are kind of recipes that are updated from when I remember as a kid, which that was kind of the point. I want to take maybe stuff people grew up with in the 40s, 50s, and 60s and give them kind of a modern spin. Mm-hmm. And also just some good classics, too. And as my wife says, but you're not a chef. I said, no, but I'm an eater. I know what guys like. And this is the kind of stuff I think they're going to like.
So that brings up a question. How do you come up with these recipes? Is it stuff that you just do in the kitchen? Is it stuff you pick up from other people? What goes into this book?
It's a little bit of everything. My wife had worked in catering for a long time, and she's an amazing chef. She really is. So we will experiment a little bit. I will go through old church cookbooks as kind of a basis and a start and go, okay, what can we add to this now for a modern palate? Because, what we're eating now is different from the 1940s.
Oh, yes.
Sometimes it's just like, hey, what are we going to do today? Well, I got some crab here. Let's go through the spices and let's see if there's a new way to cook this. And, more often than not, it turns out pretty good, but there have been some bad experiments. But the dogs love that because that means they're going to eat good that night.
Oh, yeah. The dogs always love poorly cooked food. You're right about that. Let's go ahead and run through. We got enough time to run through maybe one recipe. Go ahead and run through one from your Fishing Shack cookbook that people are going to like.
Okay. This is a real simple one, and I've done this. I do this at least once a month just because it's so quick to do. I call it souped up fish, and you can use any pound of any kind of fresh fish. I kind of steer away from the salmon, but usually any kind of a white fish or a mild fish this will work with. You need a can of cream of mushroom soup, a quarter cup of apple juice, not apple cider, but apple juice, and a quarter teaspoon of curry powder. And basically what you do is you just combine the ingredients thoroughly. You pour them over the fish into a baking pan. You bake it at 350 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes, and it tastes amazing. Even if you don't like mushrooms, with everything kind of combining the sweetness of the juice and a little bit of the heat from the curry, it really makes the fish taste amazing.
Well, like you said, easy schmeezy, and it sounds like it's going to taste great. And folks, that's just one of the recipes you're going to find in Flannel John's Fishing Shack cookbook, which is one of 14 books that Tim Murphy has written. And the ones that I've got in my hand, Flannel John's Hunting Cabin cookbook with venison, fowl, and wild game, the Fishing Shack cookbook with fish, shrimp, clams, crabs, and oysters. We better give people a website so they can find out more and start buying some of these and help out the Wounded Warrior Project.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just go to flanneljohn.com. flanneljohn.com. They're also available through amazon.com, but if you go through Flannel John and go through PayPal, I get a higher royalty, and that way I can donate more to Wounded Warriors. So either channel will work, but the more we can do for the Warriors, the better off we are.
I agree completely. Again, folks, that's flanneljohn.com, flanneljohn.com for some of these great and easy and simple to make and simple to use cookbooks. Tim, thanks for telling us all about them on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Thanks, John.
Ah, the great outdoors. I'm ready for a great weekend of camping at this remote campground. But first, I think I'll invite my camp neighbors over for a meal of fire-roasted hot dogs and baked beans. Dum-de-dum.
Dum-de-dum. Hi, neighbors. I just came over to...
Pizza!
Hey, is that pizza you're eating? How did you get pizza out in the middle of nowhere?
Pizza!
Thanks. Oh, this is delicious. A pizza oven operated on a propane canister and another on the top of your camp stove? And they're both made by Camp Chef? I knew Camp Chef made great stuff for outdoors cooking, but this? I've got to get one of these pizza ovens from Camp Chef. No more beans and weenies for this guy. From now on, it's artisan pizza for me when I'm camping.
Pizza!
The Camp Chef Pizza Oven. Make your own artisan masterpiece on your back patio or at the campground. Find out more at your local sporting goods dealer or at campchef.com.
Pheasants Forever is working hard every day to ensure there's more wildlife habitat for the future. To join us, go to pheasantsforever.org.
Back with Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. It's time again for news and reports from the field, brought to you every week by Mardon Resort, where the big news is the opening of Blythe Bay, a brand new addition to the resort at Eastern Washington's Potholes Reservoir. This addition features RV sites with big RVs and trailers in mind, as well as 4 camper cabins for those of you who want to get away outdoors, but not necessarily rough it. Find out more about Blythe Bay, the new RV sites, and the camper cabins at mardonresort.com. That's Mardon Resort, where the fish bite, but we don't. We start off with bad news for upland bird hunters in Montana, since it appears the sage grouse season will be closed in 2014. Jeff Hagener, the director for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, says biologists counted an average of 14.9 males per sage grouse strutting ground, or LEC as it's called, last year, and it doesn't look like things will be any better this year. The current counts are the lowest recorded since 1980 and 48% below the long-term average of 30 males per LEC. So, while this may not be good news, it does appear to be a necessary act to help these sage grouse populations rebound. On the competitive side of things, the Outdoor Wire reports Oregon State University came out on top in the FLW College Fishing Western Conference Tournament that took place earlier this month in the California Delta. Zach McDonald and Zach Martinez were the 2 anglers who took the first place trophy with a 5 bass catch, weighing in at just under 20 pounds. Way to go, Beavers. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has been hard at work in Washington and Oregon. The conservation organization is celebrating the acquisition of 4,100 acres of prime elk habitat by the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife in Chelan County in central Washington's Stemilt Basin that will go a long ways towards helping the Colocum elk herd there. Representatives from the Elk Foundation have literally been working for years with various stakeholders to make this happen, and it's a cause very much worthy of celebration. Meanwhile, in Oregon, the Elk Foundation is donating $265,000 to benefit 20 habitat projects in 14 counties in both western and eastern Oregon. According to David Allen, the CEO of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, these grants will fund noxious weed treatments, prescribed burning, seeding and planting, meadow restoration, forest thinning, and other projects designed to improve forage for elk, deer, and a wide variety of other wildlife species. I'll tell you what, this organization does some good work, not only for the elk, but for other species as well. You can find out more about them at rmef.org. And from the Outdoor Press Room, we learn an anti-wolf hunting protest that took place this month on the steps of the Idaho Capitol in Boise was not exactly a howling success. It turns out only 19 protesters, instead of the promised 250, showed up to demand Governor Butch Otter's resignation over his wolf policy that uses hunting and trapping as a means to manage the numbers of those predators in the gem state. I'm guessing that protest sounded more like a low whimper than angry barking to the governor, assuming he could even hear that much from such a small group. Turning to field reports, the Idaho Angler Fly Shop in Boise reports the Oahe River along the border of Idaho and Oregon has been fishing well. Afternoon has been the prime time to be on the river, with all sorts of hatches going off like blue wing olives, pale morning duns, caddis, and yellow sallies. Match those hatches, and you should get into some good-sized brown and rainbow trout on this scenic little river. In north central Washington, Anton Jones with Daryl and Dad's Guide Service has a report from Lake Chelan. He says what keeps on keeping on is trolling in the early morning above the yacht club on the lake for Mackinac. Rainbow trout fishing from the shoreline on Lake Chelan is still going strong too. He suggests fishing Collier Edge above the yacht club for quality Lakers along the 290-foot bench, or shallower between 175 and 195 feet deep. You'll want to troll at about 1 to 1.3 miles an hour, as close to the bottom as you can without snagging. Silver Horde's needlefish squiddies, rigged with a Max Lure smile blade and glow and baited with a triangle of northern pike minnow, has been the go-to presentation. If you're fishing from the bank and docks on Lake Chelan, use slip sinker rigs and catch some rainbow trout. Anton suggests fishing Potskey's firebait, an American Wildfire, on a 30-inch leader to get these mostly 14 to 16-inch fish. Find out more about fishing Lake Chelan and going out with Anton or one of his great guides at DarylAndDads.com. And in Montana, the Bighorn Angler Fly Shop reports fishing on the Bighorn has been consistent for nymph fishermen and nothing short of spectacular for dry fly anglers. Midges have been hatching in the morning and blue wings in the afternoon, with overcast days being the best. Flies like the CDC Sparkle Dun, Sipper Emerger, and Smoke Jumper in sizes 18 to 20 should work well for catching browns and bows in the afternoon. The folks at the Bighorn Fly Shop expect the good fishing to keep up despite higher flows into mid-June. Find out more about fishing the Bighorn by yourself or with a guide at bighornflyfishing.com. Next up, we bring you some audio we recorded at the Pacific Northwest Sportsman Show about a tuna tournament series taking place off the Oregon coast this summer. Welcome back to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz. Up next, we're talking to the captain of the Tuna Dog, Captain Del Stevens. He is also the 2012 champion of the Oregon Tuna Classic Tournament Series and the chairman of this year's Oregon Tuna Classic Tournament Series. Del, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about this tournament series where people are catching tuna for a good cause.
Yeah, thank you. The Oregon Tuna Classic is all about fishermen coming together, having a great time, running offshore 40, 50 miles, fishing all day for albacore, and donating their catch to the hungry in Oregon and Washington.
That is fantastic. And I guess we'll start with that. How much tuna did you guys donate last year?
Last year, the tuna itself was about 13,000 pounds, plus we gave them $15,000. And they can buy 5 pounds of food for every dollar you give them.
That is absolutely incredible. So does this go to food banks throughout Oregon State?
This goes to food banks throughout Oregon, as well as Southwest Washington and the food banks of Pacific County up in Long Beach, Washington.
You know, I've heard of a lot of tournaments doing good deeds, but this seems to be taking it to a whole nother level. So we've got that it's a great thing that you're doing for people in need. But let's talk about the fishing part a little bit. You know, what is the tournament schedule, so to speak, and what ports are you launching from?
Well, the first tournament is in El Waco, Washington, and that's August 1st and 2nd. 3 weeks later, we move to Garibaldi for the season finale, which is August 22nd and 23rd.
So we're talking just 2 tournaments, one on the northern Oregon coast and one at the, well, basically the southwest tip of the Washington coast at the mouth of the Columbia.
That is correct, yeah. And they'll be fishing off the mouth of the Columbia River. There'll be a lot of people out there starting to fish buoy 10 as well, so you've got to navigate through all that and then navigate 50, 60 miles offshore, sometimes in some pretty sporty seas.
How many boats compete in this tournament series?
We've had as many as 81 teams in one tournament. We get between 600 and 800 people in the tent Saturday night for the awards banquet. Sometimes we'll have as many as 150 spectators watching it.
That's fantastic. And I guess, you know, this isn't like a bass tournament, folks, where it's just 2 guys on an open bass boat. I mean, you've got a whole team that works with you in each boat, don't you?
That's correct. Yeah, we'll have as many as 4 to 6 people on a team competing offshore, and we'll have as few as 2 people on a boat sometimes.
And I understand, having seen her at the show here, that one of your team members is actually your wife.
That's correct. I actually have a team of 5 people, and there are 2 ladies, one of which is my wife, and one of them is a 26-year-old young lady that's just a friend of ours who competes as well with us.
So what did it take doing the 2012 series in terms of how many tuna and how big were they that you caught?
Well, your 5 biggest tuna is what you turn in to be weighed. And in the 2012 series, we pre-fished one day, landed about 22 tuna that day, and then the next 2 days we landed about 50 50 to 53 tuna each day that day. We donated all of those, I think, between 6 days of fishing, 2 days of pre-fishing between two tournaments, and then 2 days of competition at each tournament. We donated 198 fish between those two tournaments. And when you're landing that many fish, you have more fish to sort through to get 5 heaviest fish.
It's incredible. If people want to find out more, A, about the great work you're doing to help those in need, and B, about taking part in this tournament series, is there a website we can direct them to?
Yes, there is. They need to go to OregonTunaClassic.org.
That's OregonTunaClassic.org, OregonTunaClassic.org. This is a tournament series that's doing some great stuff, and looks like it'd be a lot of fun to compete in as well. Dale, thanks for telling us all about it, and good luck with the series this year.
All right, thank you. Look to see you on the water.
That's the sound you hear when a fish hits the new Sonic bait fish from Max Lure Company. This metal lure can be cast, trolled, or jigged and will catch just about anything that swims in the sea, the river, or the lake. The Sonic bait fish has a unique vibration and flutter that can be rigged in 7 different ways. With all sorts of eye-catching colors and weights available, you'll be reaching for the Sonic bait fish as your go-to lure. It's the Sonic bait fish. Only from Max Lure Company.
Looking to leave the world behind? Then escape to Northeast Oregon's Alpine Country, Wallowa County. With over 560 miles of trails and 60 high mountain lakes, the Eagle Cap Wilderness beckons you to explore. The deep glacial waters of Wallowa Lake call you to fish for record kokanee in the Hells Canyon, North America's deepest river canyon, lures you to experience the wild waters of Snake River. Wake up to the world of Wallowa County. Your morning begins at WallowaCountyChamber.com.
Psst, yeah, you, the guide, outfitter, or outdoors business owner who's listening to Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Have you ever thought of becoming a sponsor of our show? We've got local sponsor opportunities at all 50 of the stations that carry Northwestern Outdoors every week, and we've got some network opportunities too. If the outdoors is your business, we can help you with your advertising needs. Contact me, John Cruz, through our website at northwesternoutdoors.com. That's northwesternoutdoors.com, helping you get the word out about your outdoors company.
When I'm backpacking in the mountains, I like to travel light. That's why I carry Camp Chef's ready-made gourmet outdoor meals. These freeze-dried meals cook right in the pouch. Just add water. With menu choices like cheesy lasagna, teriyaki chicken with rice, and more, these meals taste great. Look for Camp Chef's ready-made gourmet meals at a sporting goods store near you or at campchef.com. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
We're talking to Mike Meisberg again at Mardon Resort at Eastern Washington's huge Potholes Reservoir. Mike, why is your resort so popular every summer?
Fun in the sun, in a beautiful warm camping area, swimming area, fishing for all kinds of fish, especially topwater bass fishing.
We are just scratching the surface as to why you'll want to head there this summer. Find out more at mardonresort.com. That's Mardon Resort, where the fish bite, but we don't.
From the Columbia River to Puget Sound, the Coastal Conservation Association in the Pacific Northwest works to conserve the fish we love and does so while protecting our heritage of sport fishing. To find out more, go to ccapnw.org. Again, that's ccapnw.org.
We're back with one last cast from John Cruz on Northwestern Outdoors Radio.
Let's run through some upcoming events before we go. The North Central Washington's Coastal Conservation Association, that's right, CCA Banquet is taking place June 7th at the Eagles Lodge in Wenatchee. This really is going to be a fun event. Dinner's going to be served at 6, but doors open at 5, and there's going to be raffles, auctions, and the chance to hang out with a lot of anglers who are interested in having fun, talking fishing, and raising money for a group that supports both conservation and recreational angling here in the Northwest. Pick up your tickets at Hooked on Toys on North Wenatchee Avenue in Wenatchee for the CCA Banquet in Wenatchee taking place June 7th. Make plans, too, to enjoy a free fishing day or weekend here in the Northwest. It's happening on June 7th and 8th in Oregon, and the ODFW website is full of places you can go where fishing events with kids in mind are taking place. You can also fish for free next weekend in any of Washington's waters as well, whether you want to cast for trout, bass, or salmon. This is not only a great time to fish without a license in your state, but in others as well. The following weekend on the 14th and 15th, you can wet a line in one of Montana's famous trout streams for free. And the 14th is Idaho's Free Fishing Day as well, in case you're inclined to fish for bass, sturgeon, crappie, or catfish in the Snake River, or maybe for something else in the Gem State's amply stocked waters. That's all for this week. If you get a chance, check out our Facebook page. It's Northwestern Outdoors Radio. Like us, follow us. We're always putting information up there that doesn't necessarily make it on the show. And check out our website, too, at northwesternoutdoors.com. You'll find previews of the upcoming show, links to find out more about our guests, and audio from last week's show, just in case you couldn't catch the whole thing. That website again, northwesternoutdoors.com. Spring is rapidly turning into summer. The weather has been good in a lot of parts of the Northwest, and that means it's time to go play outside. So until next time, take care, God bless, and make it a point to spend some time outdoors.